Bigfoot, a 50-year journey come full circle. Written by Dr. Matthew A. Johnson. I'm Willie Rose. And when I say I tossed and turned all night and I shaved and all that sort of thing, just know it's not me, it's this guy. That's Dr. Matthew Johnson. Here we go with Chapter 1, Going for a Ride. This is in Part 1, From Myth and Legend into Reality. It was 3 a.m. on Monday morning, July 10th, 2000. The alarm clock jolted me out of my sleep. I had tossed and turned all night long due to anxiety. My mind would not shut off. Although the shower was refreshing, it didn't wake me up, not even close. Nevertheless, I managed to shave, brush my teeth, comb my hair, get my clothes on, fasten all of the buttons, and get outside to wait for my ride. I wasn't sure if I was shivering due to the temperature or shaking because of my anxieties, or both. At 4 a.m., the dark sky and cold temperatures didn't make it easy for me to climb inside the vehicle that came by to pick me up. Within seconds, after a very polite greeting and welcome, I was off on an adventure. I couldn't believe that I was sitting in the back of a stretch limo riding north to Portland, Oregon. Ironically, I was listening to Don't Stop Believing by Journey over the stereo system in the back of the car. I drank some juice. It was too early to partake of the alcohol. I had to be in the interview chair and ready to go at the Portland NBC affiliate station by 6 a.m. sharp. As the street lights were flashing by the windows and blinding my tired eyes, I was hoping that I didn't overdress for my interview with Jane Clayson on the Today Show. Normally, I reserved wearing suits and ties for weddings and funerals. Up until 6 months prior, I had been a 20-year resident of Alaska. While living there, I acquired a taste for the low-key casual dress code prevalent across America's largest state, where some men would wear Carhartt overalls to church on Sunday mornings. While living there, I developed an allergy to dressing up. However, I'd been told that I clean up nicely. Needless to say, I was scared to death. In less than 2 hours, several million people were going to be watching me on TV and listening to my unbelievable story. However, I was happy that Bryant Gumbel was homesick that morning and unable to interview me. I just didn't think that he was going to be as kind and polite as I was hoping Jane Clayson would be when the camera and lights were turned on. 3 days earlier, on Friday, July 7th, I had received a phone call from a producer who wanted to book me for an interview on their TV show. Although several local Oregon TV news shows and radio stations had already contacted me, I was not very media savvy. When she told me that they wanted to book me for a 2-minute interview on their show, I told her no, absolutely not. I told her that I couldn't possibly tell my entire story in 2 short minutes. I told her that I wasn't willing to do the interview unless they gave me at least 4 minutes. She responded to me with a very loud, frustrated sigh and told me that she would talk with her boss and get back to me in less than an hour. I apologized for the inconvenience I was causing her, but I held my ground. Approximately 45 minutes later, she called me back and told me that they would guarantee me a 4-minute interview. However, she said, if Good Morning America or any of the other major morning TV shows contact you, we get first dibs for the interview with you. I was very confused and asked, "Who is this?" She said, "We're the Today Show broadcasting live out of New York City. Who did you think we were?" I responded, "I thought you were a local Oregon TV news station." She said, "No, sir, you've made it into the big leagues. We're the Today Show in New York City, but we're going to interview you at our affiliate NBC station located in Portland, Oregon. The only thing that will bump your interview on Monday morning is if Cuba sends Elian Gonzalez back to the USA." Once I realized that I was dealing with the Today Show out of New York City, I felt both horrible and excited at the same time. I felt horrible because I didn't want her to think that I was some kind of prima donna demanding twice as much time as they were originally willing to give me for the interview. On the other hand, I was excited because they must have really wanted to hear my story and get it out there to the world if they were willing to double their precious interview time from 2 minutes to 4 minutes. Also, the fact that they wanted me to commit to giving them first dibs if any of the other major morning TV shows contacted me demonstrated to me just how much they wanted me on their show. Wow, was this really happening? As planned, the stretch limo arrived at the Portland, Oregon NBC affiliate station at approximately 5:30 a.m. The sun was coming up, I was more awake, and my nerves were jacked up. I was escorted into the building and taken upstairs to the area where the interview chair was positioned in front of a very big camera. A very kind lady sat me in the chair. I received some light touch-up with makeup, had an earpiece placed in my ear so I could hear Jane Clayson's questions, a mic placed on my shirt so she could hear my responses, and I was instructed to wait for the producer to count down over the earpiece for the interview to begin. In the meantime, my nerves weren't helped by the fact that in the same room, sitting at their own desks, preparing for their shows, were Lars Larson and Tracy Berry, both local Oregon news icons. I obviously didn't know it, but Lars Larson would eventually become a national conservative commentator icon with his own syndicated radio program. I couldn't believe that I was sitting in the same room with them. I was in awe. The whole experience was surreal. While waiting to be interviewed by the Today Show, Lars Larson was talking with Tracy Berry. He was joking, laughing, and telling her about the new recipient of the Darwin Natural Selection Award. Apparently, some lady in her mid-80s stepped outside of her car while the car wash was in full operation and got herself killed in Hillsboro, Oregon. I remember him laughing and talking about how stupid it was for anyone to climb out of their vehicle in the middle of their car being washed. I also remember thinking how disappointed I felt when I heard him talking that way about the demise of the elderly woman and laughing. I thought his humor was inappropriate, and I felt sorry for her family. I've never forgotten that moment. Although I like him as a conservative radio commentator and I share his conservative political views, I thought he was being insensitive at that moment in time. However, he did manage to distract me from my overwhelming nerves. Tracy Berry appeared to ignore his humor. In Lars Larson's defense, I have also joked inappropriately in order to cope with the constant exposure to the negative news that has constantly crossed my path as a licensed clinical psychologist over the past 2 decades. Suddenly, the producer spoke up through the earpiece, and the countdown began. The lights came on, including the light on the very big camera, and I could hear the ending of the previous segment before my interview. Then I could hear that Jane Clayson was introducing me, and my interview was beginning. My heart was pounding rather quickly, but I was telling myself to remain calm and professional. It was quite odd because I did not have a visual monitor. I could not see Jane Clayson. The only thing that I could see was the very big camera staring back at me. I felt like I was sitting there talking to the camera. Near the beginning of the interview, I found myself multitasking in my mind. While I was listening to Jane Clayson talk, I was worried about Lars Larson and Tracy Berry possibly continuing to talk while I was being interviewed. I thought it was weird that I wasn't placed in a private room without any possible distractions. To my delight, they were both very professional and remained totally quiet while my interview took place. I didn't want America learning about the latest Darwin Natural Selection Award in the background. I'm a perfectionist in that way. I always want everything to be spot on. As Jane Clayson was interviewing me, I thought things were going well. I thought I was managing my anxiety fairly well while answering her questions intelligently. Then she asked the proverbial question. Do your friends think that you're crazy? I could hear that tone of her voice had changed and that the interview was about to go down a path that I wasn't looking forward to. Fortunately, I had prepared myself ahead of time for the worst-case scenario. For the moment when, after helping me feel comfortable and getting the story out of me, where she sets me up to look crazy to the audience by asking the confrontational question about my sanity. Because I had rehearsed for this moment several times in my mind in case the situation arose during the interview, I was prepared with a proper response. As my college basketball coach Harry Larrabee used to say, prior proper planning prevents piss-poor performance, which came in handy when we played against teams like Georgetown, North Carolina, Kentucky, Louisville, Houston, and other teams. In the spirit of prior proper planning, I chose to dress in my suit and tie rather than my typical hoodie and baseball cap. I thought that the professional look combined with my rehearsed response would shut her up and get her to back away from her attempt to belittle me on national TV. I simply responded to her question in a very calm and professional manner. No, my friends all know me. They know that I'm a Christian and that I'm a doctor of psychology and that I wouldn't lie about something like this. Boom! During my stretch limo ride back to Salem, Oregon, I was feeling a major sense of release. I could finally breathe. The interview was over. I couldn't believe how fast it went by. My heart rate was dropping back down to normal. I was extremely pleased when I realized that the interview that I had successfully negotiated to be extended from 2 minutes to 4 minutes had actually lasted for a grand total of 10 minutes. That's right, 5 times longer than the initial precious 2 minutes that they were originally willing to give me. I chuckled to myself as it became clear to me that I managed to throw off Jane Clayson, put her in her place, and that she actually eventually became intrigued by my story. When I returned to my parents' home in Salem, Oregon, I was greeted with fanfare from family and friends. My kids thought Daddy was a TV star. We sat down for some breakfast and watched the videotape of my interview. Wow, what a different perspective. It's one thing to be sitting in someone else's office in front of a very large camera with lights in your face versus watching the verbal exchange on the TV set. As I watched the videotape of the interview, 2 things became very clear to me. First, I was right. She was setting me up for the proverbial question to make me look crazy to her national audience. Second, she was unprepared for my calm and professional response. I could see it on her face and through her body language. I caught her off guard. I could tell that she hadn't been properly prepped regarding my story or my background. The truth of the matter is that Bryant Gumbel was most likely prepped. Then he became ill and stayed home from work. Jane Clayson filled in at the last minute and conducted the interview instead of him. When I told her, "No, my friends all know me. They know that I'm a Christian and that I'm a doctor of psychology and that I wouldn't lie about something like this," she was blown away. She looked totally shocked. However, she's a professional and recovered very quickly. From that moment on, the entire interview changed and went on for a total of 10 minutes. Grand slam home run. She ended the interview behaving in a very respectful manner and said, "Well, there's a story to tell the grandchildren someday." She had no idea. As things have turned out, it has become a story to tell to the rest of the world, not just a story to tell to my grandchildren. My family's encounter on the mountain above the Oregon Caves National Monument Park on the right side of the Big Tree Loop Trail is not just a story that begins and ends on that fateful Saturday on July 1st, 2000. Rather, the story also includes everything else that I've experienced and learned during the subsequent 17 years of research into the Bigfoot phenomena. Buckle up, ladies and gentlemen. You're going for a ride too. An adventure of amazement and wonder.